How much of what you learned on the fields at Yale or walking around Yale do you feel stays with you in your careers and in daily life?
You know, and you're all athletes, so for the most part, I think so. In some way, you're preaching to the choir, but it's something that you always hear as a young athlete. And I remember it's not until you get out into the real world and you're no longer competing in the same way, but you're still competing at a certain level. And I remember the time that something really grabbed me about your athletic experience at Yale. And again, I fortunately played on some great teams under Koza, won Ivy League championship my sophomore year. We went to the last game of it my junior year, nationally ranked. Just a lot of guys. Every team had at least 3 NFL draft choices from Yale alone. So we learned how to win, but we also lost some very tough games. And sometimes the greatest and the grandest and the most difficult lesson for a talented athlete such as all of you is learning how to lose and what it means. When I got out of law school, I was a prosecutor for a number of years, and then I went into private practice. And I was asked by a group of people to defend the first death penalty case in the Northeast. And I remember when we got to this stage, and if any of you understand the process, if it's a death penalty case, there are 2 separate trials. The first is, are you guilty or not? And the second is, will you live or will you die as a consequence of this? And so, as I said, a number of groups had asked me to defend it, and we knew that in the first stage there would be a guilty verdict because the young man had confessed. So the jury comes back and they say guilty. And the judge says, tomorrow morning we are going to start the penalty phase. And I remember walking outside, and it's cold and it's dark and it's snowing out, and I'm standing on the steps of this courthouse by myself, and I said to myself, starting tomorrow, I literally have somebody's life in my hands. Probably not terribly different from what Ken does as a doctor, but for me as a lawyer, you deal with a lot of significance. I've never dealt with having somebody's life in my hands. And you come back to things in your life for guidance. And I found myself as an athlete coming back to things that you had learned in terms of your training and your visions and how you focus on things and what you have to do. And I've always said to people when they've asked about this, is the great value of being an athlete, especially a place such as Yale, is not how many games you won and how many games you lost. I mean, I probably, it'd take me a while if I sat down to add up how many games I won here as opposed to how many games I lost. But the other values you walked away from that get you through life. And I remember that night standing on the steps of the courthouse saying, I got to save somebody's life tomorrow. I better get started on some things tonight. And to learn and to take some of the things I've learned and to utilize them. So that is the great value, I think, of being an athlete. It's not that when you come back, I have a 40-year reunion tomorrow of a championship team, and it's going to be marvelous, and I'll see guys that I haven't seen in 40 years, or some of them. But that is not the great enduring value of having been an athlete at Yale. There are other things that are far more important that you will glean from having been an athlete at Yale, and I think you'll find them as you get into whatever your life is going to be, but they'll always be with you, and that's what's important.
I would, building off of that, comment on, I think, one thing for me that was significant that I've carried with me, and actually I've tried to recreate it wherever I've been, and I think it's helped define me as a leader. Back when we were playing sports, and believe it or not, those of us women who played sports in the 70s and early 80s, we were pretty serious about it. Maybe we didn't have all the resources that you have, and thank goodness you have a lot more than we had. But we were darn serious about what we did. But do you think there were many people in the stands? No. Do you think there was many people who really cared? Not really. But we cared. We cared about each other. And what I took away was the commitment to my teammates. And being on a team and being on something that you all cared passionately about, that you were committed to, and that you couldn't let them down, that you had to do your very best for them. And once I left that, wow, that's a special thing. And when you get out in life, as having been an athlete and having been competed at that level, that's a feeling that you miss. And so what I did is I looked for that in my professional life. So I'm a 22-year-old in Mobile, Alabama, working in a paper mill. Now, if you can see a paper mill, it's a giant factory, hundreds of acres, smokestacks, blue-collar guy. So I'm out on a paper machine, and we're going to run that crew just like we ran that field hockey team at Yale. We're going to care about what we do. We're going to set goals. We're going to try to win. And I think most of them thought I was a little nuts. But you know what? I hungered for that feeling of team. And so to me, that's what I got out of my athletics, was being on a team, being on with a group of people that really cared about what you were doing and doing it together and doing it for a common goal that you had. That bond is just something that's tremendous. And that's the other thing I will tell you, to not take for granted the time you're here. And some of you are seniors in the room, and some of you just finished up your fall seasons. Some of you have a spring left to go. That's a special time, and it's a unique opportunity in your life. So, you know, revel in every bit of it, because you know, you'll be trying to recreate that, I think, as you go through life, and you probably will in other venues through your life.
Well, individual sports, particularly like track, teach you something, I think, a little bit different, because the team spirit isn't quite the same. You like to win as a team, but at the end of the day, it's still, did you perform? And there's no hiding. What I learned is that you could really push yourself, that no matter how hard it is, you could always go a little more. That no matter how much you thought it was going to hurt, you can still do it. And there's a self-discipline that you learn from track that gives you confidence that even some of the worst days that you're about to go through in your life, you're going to get through. I remember, because I was a sprinter, and the longest I would run in high school was 220 yards, 200 meters now. And freshman team never has enough people to run all the relays. So the coach says to me before the first meet, you're going to run quarter mile in the mile relay. I mean, I know what this is going to mean. I mean, this is going to mean enormous pain for the last 50 or 60 yards if I don't throw up. And that's what it's going to mean. But, you know, that little microcosm happens again and again in a track person's life. The number of times you throw up after practice, you lose track of how many times, because that's what you do. That's your commitment to get good at something. And I'll tell you, it made everything else easy. There's nothing else in life that I've had to do that was as hard as the day I called my parents before my first freshman meet, and I said, I got to run a quarter mile. You know, but all those workouts, all those bad days, all those times leaning over and throwing up, it doesn't compare. Everything is easy. I could spend days writing grants. I could be up all night with patients. It's nothing as hard as the self-discipline that taught.
So Ken, how'd the first race go?
I was terrible. I wasn't very good. I mean, I'm sure I handed the baton and left. No, I wasn't that bad, but I wasn't good. I don't run quarter mile.